Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Out front now, Chief Political Correspondent Dana Bash, former Nixon White House counsel John Dean, and White House correspondent for American Urban Radio Network's April Ryan. Dana, let me start with you. Whitaker has been fully briefed. He says Bob Mueller's almost done. I think, as Evan pointed out, he appeared to stumble, maybe realizing he shouldn't be saying that, but nonetheless, say it, he did.
Say it, he did, and that was, revealing, certainly. But what was alarming to some Democrats on the Hill, and maybe even some Republicans, is the other part of his comment, Aaron, and that is that he said that the Mueller report is being reviewed, that he's reviewing it. Senator Chris Coons told our colleague Manu Raju, and I spoke with him as well, that is something that is raising many, many alarm bells among him and fellow Democrats on the Judiciary Committee in particular, because it opens up the question of, okay, if he's reviewing it, what does that mean? Is he censoring it? Is he telling the White House about it? What exactly are the specifics of that review? And you can be sure those follow-up questions are going to be asked.
Absolutely, because they all want to see it, and they want the American public to see it, right? I mean, I know we've got obviously some bipartisan efforts to that, and we'll see what happens. I mean, April, you were in the room today when Sarah Sanders was asked questions about the investigation, right? Specifically referring to Stone and what Trump did or didn't tell Stone to do, right? And she simply would not answer them, and they were repeated.
I even asked Sarah Huckabee Sanders, is the president in contact with mutual friends who are possibly are friends with those who are indicted, preferably Roger Stone? And she says, I'm not sure of that. And the question was asked because are these people taking information, these mutual friends taking information from Roger Stone or Michael Cohen or Paul Manafort back to the president? And she says, I'm not aware of that. But they're trying to make sure that they walk a very fine line because at that time, if we know correctly, they may not have known that the investigation was probably over. But also, I have a little news, too, as well. Apparently, before Roger Stone was, his house was raided by the FBI just hours before, he had several influencers from Trump's circle of friends at his home for a gathering. And some who were there were wondering if the FBI actually was there watching as they were there for this gathering. And that kind of led me into that question today about that. And she just said, I don't know. I have not heard anything about that. She doesn't believe that's happening.
Interesting when as you report on that, on a gathering like that, obviously significant and raises significant questions.
Yes.
I mean, John Dean, I want to play a little bit more of what Whitaker had to say about where the investigation goes. Here he is.
Fundamentally, the Mueller investigation has a very defined scope, and so anything outside of that scope would have to either be the scope would have to be enhanced to bring additional matters to be investigated by the Mueller investigation. But obviously, if it's not given to that investigation by an increasing in the scope of the investigation, it would be retained by the Department of Justice.
John, obviously big questions here because, in light of the whole situation with Roger Stone, right, that a senior campaign official was directed to tell Roger Stone to go get the dirt from the Russian-linked WikiLeaks, right? We don't know who that person is. Obviously, it begs the question of whether it's the President of the United States and what that means. Sounds like what Whitaker is saying is that even when Mueller is done, the DOJ can continue to investigate. The question for you, John Dean, though, is would Donald Trump's DOJ do that?
Well, that's a good question. I was focusing as well on what Dana said earlier, and that part of his remarks, which caught my attention, where he said, I'm comfortable that the decisions that were made are going to be reviewed. I'm not quite sure what that meant. And then he also added, right now, the investigation is, I think, close to being completed. I think he was trying to nudge Mueller and try to tell Mueller, well, I'm still here and I'm still looking over your shoulder, and I might be making some decisions. Dana, that's the only way I could read that.
Dana, what are the fears right now from everyone you're speaking to on Capitol Hill about what it means if he's really saying and I'm close to being complete. Look, it could be a bluff, right? It could be a trying to nudge, or it could be real. But nonetheless, this is the first time we've heard it. So for some on Capitol Hill, that's a huge concern.
Right, and but really the word review is the big concern among some of the Democrats. The concern that review means interfere, frankly.
And interfere or change or redact or something.
And he has been overseeing the Mueller investigation, for some time. And at least on the public face of it, it doesn't look like he has interfered, because we have the Stone indictment, we have other things that have happened since Whitaker has been in charge, since Sessions was fired. But we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes with regard to Mueller wrapping up, Whitaker looking at what he has. Again, the concern among some on Capitol Hill that he's, doing more than sending a signal, but telegraphing in a more direct, detailed way to the White House in a way that may not be appropriate. Now, those are fears that we don't know if that's true, but certainly the way that Whitaker answered the question fanned those fears.
And John, you also have, when you're talking about, first of all, the big question of who directed Roger, the senior campaign official to direct Roger Stone, right? That person seems to be very important. We don't know who it is. We assume Mueller does, and that there's something up his sleeve. We don't know about that. We also now know Michael Cohen is going to be testifying to the House Intelligence Committee, right, which he had withdrawn and citing fears for his family. Now he's going to go back and do that, and he's going to do it next week. So the timing on that is also very important.
I would encourage him to also resume his testimony in front of the House Oversight Committee and do it publicly. He says he's worried about his family. There's nothing better he can do than go public with his testimony. I can tell you from personal experience, as somebody who lived under death threats, who people didn't know my testimony at the time, and the best thing I could have done is what I did, was testify openly, and while I was under the Witness Protection Program, it certainly, nobody had any mystery in their mind anymore about what I had to say.
It's interesting. In April, I will say one thing today was Sarah Sanders repeatedly saying, the president did nothing wrong or evading the question. One thing she did not say was, I refer you to Rudy Giuliani, to the attorneys. And an interesting change in tack of what we're used to hearing.
Well, number one, Rudy Giuliani has been the fly in the ointment for them at the White House. He doesn't consult with them, and he's now has confounded more so the situation. He needs to stop talking, and the White House has been hopeful that he will stop talking. But I want to go back to something that you said. I talked to a former Justice Department, high-ranking Justice Department official who said about this investigation, one thing that could really reopen this for Mueller if he comes back, if he were to come back to probe more, is the fact that Manafort and Stone would just completely, cooperate. And that's one thing that could reopen this and could really change the dynamic as well.
It is Tuesday, the 29th of January of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A little bit, a scant pinch dash of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference. Go ahead, use the Spanish kind if you have it. They're equally as good. Some folk might even argue the Spanish kind is better. And I would conjecture that that is debatable. Try them both, and you'll find, yes, indeed, they are equally as good. Well, Trump is already laying the groundwork for another shutdown because Vlad told him to. You got to stop this U.S. economy because Vlad's economy is worse than Italy's. I mean, it's only clear. Oh, God, and that's just part of it. I mean, other mundane issues like Trump joking about people dying in the Midwest from the polar vortex. Well, we're going to mention the polar vortex in a story later on in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. But joking about people dying in America? Who does that? Somebody who's on the FSB payroll, maybe. And that's the least of his problems. Kamala. Did you see Kamala Harris's turnout in Oakland? Jeez. That square was packed. And I've been there. I lived in the Bay Area for about 35, 36 years. That was amazing. Wow. And then her town hall last night. I didn't watch it because I'm not a big fan of Jake Tapper. But you can follow it on other mediums, and I did. Yeah, she's a force, but it's still early. As I mentioned before to people, there's only about 180 other candidates that are going to declare their candidacy. So, we're only at about 20 or 30 right now. So we got a little bit to go before everybody declares and they start shaking themselves out. Indeed. Okay, well, I had a fairly bad weekend and I had a really bad day yesterday. Somewhat of an emotional breakdown, and things came out in the old guttural way. Yeah, what was that therapy back in the day where you would scream? I'm trying to remember that. John Lennon and Yoko Ono practiced it for a while, and his song "Mother" was emblematic of that therapy. Let it out. Well, I guess I finally got triggered to let it out because I haven't had the good cry and the good scream and all of that. And unfortunately, it might have been triggered by a family member who doesn't have as, I don't know, shall we say, the capacity for another person's grief. Maybe that might be it. But everybody grieves in their own way, and they grieve in their way, and I guess I'm going to grieve in mine, so there. All right, well, enough of that. I had to get the diary entry in because this is what's been going on since the end of the year. Yeek. Okay, well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Of course, Sarah Sanders simply would not answer April Ryan's questions about newly indicted Trump confidant Roger Stone, and that was at the top there. On the rest of the menu, Trump's shutdown tantrum cost the U.S. economy a whopping $11 billion, and $3 billion of that we're never getting back. Ever. ProPublica developed tools to let the public see exactly how Facebook users are being targeted by advertisers. But Facebook quietly made changes to its site that stopped those efforts. You're gonna metric us, we metric you. And Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker issued a warning ahead of the dangerous polar vortex. And he wasn't joking about people dying. Let's be clear. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where Democrats are poised to throw an unprecedented light on Trump's troop deployments to the U.S.-Mexico border. Abuse of power much? And Roger Stone's Proud Boy allies are still backing him. And why wouldn't they? All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
danser. Maintenant, sous l'été, les pieds nus dans le sable. Dansez maintenant et jetez vos ennuis dans les vagues qui dansent.
Thought I'd change up the music a little bit, which is provided to us by Frances Livings. She is down in the Southern California area and performs regularly, so do check her out. There are links provided at the show notes diary, of course, and I'll mention that in just a little bit here. And so do go to those links and buy her work. Support her. She's great. So if you go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you'll notice to the rightish of the page the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the contribute button. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your recurring contribution goes a long way to helping us pay the bills here. And there are bills, and they keep piling up. How is that possible? And they get paid, and then they say, oh, well, here's another fee, or it's another month. Yikes. So thank you very much for your generosity. We are truly unable to do this without you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do that at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that platform. I take care of my own platform at Justice Putnam on Twitter, so follow me there. And I also, here's where the show notes and links diary come in. It is posted on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. I can be found there as Justice Putnam. And you can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeart, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Dan Desai Martin from Share Blue Media. In addition to the pain and hardship the Trump shutdown cost countless families, a new nonpartisan report from the CBO, that's the Congressional Budget Office, shows the U.S. economy lost a total of $11 billion thanks to Trump's decision to shut down the government for the wall he wants along the U.S.-Mexico border because of the trailer of a movie he saw. Who do you think put that in front of him? He never saw the whole movie. In fact, David mentioned this. The guy saw snippets. Was it the trailer, or was it something that Stephen Miller and a few others put together and said, look at this? Stephen Miller is on the record saying that he wants an America where no refugee ever sets foot in the United States. What is he talking about? Oh, yeah. He hates brown and black people. Okay. He's not talking about, people from Poland. Because they'll work on Trump properties without hard hats and won't even get paid. And they can't do anything about it. Oh, they tried. But they weren't really citizens. So are they really due wages? So that's why we have this $3 billion that we will never get back because of this hissy fit. And does his base really care? You know what I heard from his base? Federal workers are just parasites. I tried explaining, what federal workers do and who they might be. But really, they saw black and brown people as federal workers. And that's what Trump probably sees mostly in D.C., along with the trailer of the Sicario movie so that he can throw away $3 billion and hold up 11 total because of the national security threats that were incurred by stopping our economy. And what else? Oh, yeah, counter-espionage investigations into Russian mobsters trying to control the United States from the offices of the FSB at the Kremlin.
Les pieds nus dans le sable, dansez maintenant et jetez vos ennuis dans les vagues qui dansent, balancent au gré du vent salé. Dansez maintenant, tout l'été, aimez-vous.
Our next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes our way from ProPublica, anonymous worker bees, but I suspect it's the senior staff. A number of organizations, including ProPublica, have developed tools to let the public see exactly how Facebook users are being targeted by advertisers, but Facebook made changes so they can't do that. ProPublica, Mozilla, and Who Targets Me have all noticed their tools stopped working this month after Facebook inserted code in its website that blocks them. Well, how nice. It's their site. This is very concerning, though, said Senator Mark Warner, who has co-sponsored the Honest Ads Act, which would require transparency on Facebook ads. Investigative groups like ProPublica, Warner continued, need access to this information in order to track and report on the opaque and frequently deceptive world of online advertising. Well, it's about time. For the past year and a half, ProPublica has been building a searchable database of political ads and the segments of the population advertisers are paying to reach. You mean like elderly white people? Well, it depends. As long as they're elderly and they're willing to give up their money for any reason at all, as long as you can suggest that it's in their best interest. Okay, back to the story. Now, ProPublica did this by enlisting thousands of volunteers who installed a web browser extension. The tool shared the ads users see as well as Facebook's details on why the users were targeted. In a statement to ProPublica, Facebook said the change was meant to simply enforce its terms of service. Really? In other words, you don't follow our metrics. We follow your metrics. Facebook continued, we regularly improve the ways we prevent unauthorized access by third parties like web browser plugins to keep people's information safe. Facebook spokesperson Beth Gauthier said, yeah, safe for us to be able to exploit. This was a routine update and applied to ad blocking and ad scraping plugins, which can expose people's information to bad actors in ways they did not expect. What? You mean my ad block is... It could. And it could also mean bad actors like ProPublica, Mozilla, and what the hell is trying to follow me on Facebook? Facebook had made minor tweaks before that broke ProPublica's tool, but this time, Facebook blocked the ability to automatically pull ad targeting information. The latest move comes a few months after Facebook executives urged ProPublica to shut down its ad transparency project. Did they hire some goombas to say, hey, we're going to break your leg? You never know. In August, Facebook Ads Product Management Director Rob Lethern acknowledged ProPublica's project serves an important purpose, but he said, we're going to start enforcing on the existing terms of service that we have. He said Facebook would soon transition ProPublica away from its tool. Now, Facebook has launched an archive of American political ads, which the company says is an alternative to ProPublica's tool. Sounds like they're trying to self-regulate. And I got to tell you, I've been in state government and inspection areas of the government, and when people start self-regulating, some things might slip through the cracks, so to speak. Facebook's ad archive is only available in 3 countries, fails to disclose important target data, and does not even include all the political ads run in the United States. Well, of course not, because there's so many foreign ones from like I don't know, 400-pound Belarusian guy in the office of the FSB at the Kremlin?
Dansez maintenant, tout l'été, vous serez des cigales qui dansent, balancent au cri du vent léger. Quand l'hiver sera venu, vous prend au dépourvu. Vous danserez main dans la main et attendant l'été prochain. Dansez maintenant, tout l'été, aimez-vous sur le sable. Dansez maintenant.
If you suspected that I was going to flog this Russian conspiracy meme until the Siberian Huskies come home, I need to assure you, your suspicions are probably correct. All right. Well, finishing up here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is an article out of Reuters, an anonymous worker bee at Reuters. The governor of Illinois yesterday issued an emergency preparedness plan ahead of the historic polar vortex of cold air and wind descending on much of the U.S., warning residents that temperatures were likely to plunge well below zero. And as the so-called leader of the free world tweeted out, we could use some of that global warming. Yeah, we could, except part of global warming is having these kinds of weather patterns. You know, climate is different than weather. God, this guy. Well, Governor J.B. Pritzker said wind chill could drive temperatures to minus 55 degrees Fahrenheit in northern Illinois on Tuesday night, capable of causing frostbite in a matter of minutes. No exposed skin. Be careful. This is a potentially historic winter storm that will bring extreme cold to our state, and all Illinoisans must prepare, Pritzker said in a written statement released by his office. Did it freeze? Our administration is putting into place an emergency preparedness plan with key state agency as well as warning residents about these life-threatening conditions. The so-called polar vortex weather system was expected to send frigid winds that circulate around the North Pole across much of the United States from the Dakotas through New England. And that was mentioned by National Weather Service meteorologist Brian Hurley. If you live up in the Arctic Circle, you'd say this is pretty normal. When it's actually brought down to this level, then you know it's something serious. I would think so. Blizzard conditions were predicted across parts of western Ohio Valley, and snow was expected through Wednesday from the Great Lakes region into New England. Snowfall was also expected in the Dakotas, Minneapolis, and St. Paul, Minnesota, and in central Michigan, where a foot or more of snow is expected. Chicago will take the main brunt of the super cold weather. Oh, man, when that wind blows off the lake, talk about wind chill and lake effect. Widespread heavy snow already affecting the Chicago area yesterday. The Weather Service said wind chills as low as minus 50 were also expected by Tuesday evening through Thursday morning in the Chicago area. Nearly 2,300 U.S. flights have been canceled and another 11,800 delayed as of last night, many of them attributed to the storm. And Delta Airlines said it would waive flight change fees for passengers affected by the winter weather in Chicago, Detroit, and areas of the upper Midwest. Well, how generous of them. I guess you could say it was an act of God. They might be right. All right, we better get on to our break. And when we come back from that break, we are definitely going to go through weather from around the world. And if you think the polar vortex is giving us weather, wait till you hear from weather from around the world. And then we'll finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You You're listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Bleak Street. Much like his previous movie, Moonlight, director Barry Jenkins manages to create a beautiful, multi-layered movie out of a sad story. Set in 1970s New York, despite being named for the famous Memphis Blues Boulevard, and based on the novel by James Baldwin, If Beale Street Could Talk tells the tale of a young African-American couple, Fonnie and Tish, as they fall in love and create a family, as tragic events are about to befall. Specifically, it involves Fonnie being falsely accused of rape, just as Tish learns she's pregnant with the couple's first child. The Beale Street reference is symbolic, referring to where every black person was born, according to Baldwin. The legend that Louis Armstrong was born there is apparently just that, however. The film stands as a meditation on the struggles of African Americans in a justice system where the odds are stacked and makes personal the effects that mass incarceration has on that community. It is uncomfortably effective, especially as the film is set 40-plus years ago, and these are still contemporary issues. Since this is based on the work of James Baldwin, it's not a spoiler to say that Beale Street won't have a happy ending. In anyone else's hands, the story could come across as a soap opera, but Jenkins' deft direction, including the shooting of longtime collaborating cinematographer James Laxton and the work of his actors, prevent that. Specifically, Stephan James, a 25-year-old Toronto native, best known for his work in Amazon's Homecoming, shines as Fonnie. Likewise, Regina King, who recently won a Best Supporting Actress Golden Globe, is incredible in her role as Tish's mother, who tries her best to clear Fonnie's name. If Beale Street Could Talk is a forceful gem of a movie, a worthy follow-up to Moonlight, and one that will likely be similarly remembered during awards season. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Annie Sneed. Polar bears and coral reefs are obvious victims of climate change. But a warming world will also challenge many other animals, for example, cod. The fish play a critical role in marine ecosystems and human economies. Climate change could devastate Atlantic and polar cod. A team of scientists wanted to find out how rising sea temperatures and ocean acidification might affect these fish populations.
We went out with our research vessel into the Barents Sea and caught Atlantic cod and polar cod and brought them back alive into a research facility in northern Norway.
Flemming Dahlk, a marine biologist at the Alfred Wegener Institute in Germany.
And in this facility, we raised the eggs and larvae under different temperature and ocean acidification, mimicking the conditions expected for the next decades to come.
The researchers placed the eggs and larvae in various carbon dioxide concentrations, as well as 3 different temperature scenarios. 1, the business as usual scenario, where humans continue to emit greenhouse gases at current rates, and ocean waters increase 3 to 4 degrees Celsius. They also tested an intermediate scenario of a 2 degrees Celsius rise, and a best-case scenario where water temperatures rise only 1 degree. They then recorded egg survival rates and larval development.
The results were pretty clear. So what we found is that with ocean acidification, the eggs become more sensitive to temperature extremes. So this means that their thermotolerance range narrows, and that we found for both species. And we also found that they use more energy to regulate against the stress of temperature and ocean acidification.
The study is in the journal Science Advances.
And when we use these data and combine them with the temperature, with the climate projections, we find that with the worst case scenario, there will be a decrease in egg survival chances of about 50% in many of the important spawning areas of those species.
Although these populations might be able to adapt by shifting their spawning grounds northward.
The question is if the species will find also suitable feeding conditions in those alternative spawning areas. So it could be that the temperature is right, but they won't find enough food up in the north.
Big changes in cod populations will likely have ripple effects. Cod are food for many other animals like birds and seals, and countries like Norway depend on the income that cod fisheries haul in. But the new research also offers a bit of good news.
On the positive side, we find that in the scenario where we successfully limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, both species would be able to successfully reproduce in those areas where they spawn currently.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Annie Sneed.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
The Supreme Court soon could decide the future of representative democracy in America. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. 2 gerrymandering cases are before the High Court. In the first, from Maryland, Democratic lawmakers in 2011 redrew district lines to ensure that longtime Republican incumbent Tea Party Representative Roscoe Bartlett would lose, a plan that worked spectacularly well from the Democrats' point of view when Bartlett, who had won his 2010 race by 28 points, lost the next election by 21. In the second case from North Carolina, the Republicans in 2016 won 53% of the statewide congressional votes, but were awarded 77% of the seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, which was the plan. As the Republican lawmaker David Lewis, who drew the electoral map, said, quote, "I think electing Republicans is better than electing Democrats, so I drew this map to help foster what I think is better for the country." The court in these cases could rule that overt partisan gerrymandering violates the constitutional guarantees of free elections and equal protection. But the court might also rule that there is no constitutional restriction whatsoever on gerrymandering, which would enshrine this democracy-killing practice as the law of the land. Oral argument is scheduled before the Supreme Court in March. A decision is expected by June, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The government shutdown officially ended on Friday when Donald Trump finally agreed to a 3-week continuing resolution with no funds for a wall. Exactly what he was offered and rejected before the shutdown began. We're now getting a look at the consequences of the shutdown. It cost the economy $11 billion in total, $3 billion of which is permanently gone, this according to the Congressional Budget Office. According to White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, Trump is prepared to shut it down again or declare a national emergency if his wall ransom isn't paid. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders held her first press briefing since December 18th on Monday, and reporters opened with questions about the new February 15th deadline. Although these sessions don't happen regularly these days, in keeping with tradition, No real news was broken. Regarding Trump's threat to declare a national emergency if he doesn't get his way come February 15th, NBC's Hallie Jackson asked how a real emergency could wait 3 weeks.
If the president truly believes that what's happening is an emergency, why would he wait 3 weeks to declare it?
Because it's real simple. As the president has said, as most of us in the administration have said on a number of fronts, the best fix is to be able to do it legislatively. But if Congress, particularly Democrats in Congress, would rather play political games and actually do their jobs and fix the problem, then the president will be forced to take a different path. Again, ideally that doesn't happen, but we'll see what happens.
Neither CNN nor MSNBC carried the briefing live. Good for them. On Monday, we also heard from Acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, who said he's been, quote, fully briefed on the Mueller probe and that the investigation is winding down.
I've been fully briefed on the investigation, and, I look forward to Director Mueller delivering the final report, and I really am not going to talk about open and ongoing investigation otherwise, but, sort of the statements that I made were as a private citizen, only with publicly available information, and I am comfortable that the decisions that were made are going to be reviewed, either through the various means we have, but right now, the investigation is, I think, close to being completed, and I hope that we can get the report from Director Mueller as soon as possible.
Some Democrats in Congress aren't so sure. They think Whitaker, who previously had been publicly hostile to the probe he's now in charge of, is just spouting off Trump administration talking points. Whitaker made his comments right after bipartisan legislation was filed that would require Mueller to summarize his findings in a report to Congress and the public.
Baby, it's cold outside.
A deep freeze, which could be the coldest in a generation, is due to hit 55 million Americans over the next few days. The air will be so cold that the National Weather Service in Des Moines, Iowa, has warned that if people go outside, they should, quote, avoid taking deep breaths and minimize talking. Wow. It's predicted that Wednesday could be the coldest day ever recorded in Chicago. Its all-time coldest temperature record currently stands at 27 degrees below zero. Wind chills as low as 55 below are likely in the city, and some areas in the northern plains could see wind chills of 64 degrees below zero. It won't be quite so bad on the East Coast, where lows Wednesday night will reach 6 in New York, 7 in Philadelphia, and 9 in Washington, D.C. And you wonder why I live in Florida. Donald Trump used the freezing weather to once again dismiss climate change as a myth, sending out a tweet calling for, quote, global whamming to come back fast. Alrighty then. It's back on. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi has officially invited Donald Trump to give the State of the Union address on February 5th. Candidates are ramping up for the 2020 presidential primaries. On 60 Minutes Sunday night, former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz said he's considering a run, but the alleged lifelong Democrat said he'd run as a centrist independent. Just a few minutes into his book tour event in New York City Monday night, a heckler stood up and spoke for a lot of us.
I wanted to clarify the word independent, which I view merely as a designation on the ballot.
Don't help elect Trump, you egotistical billionaire.
The guy then shouted, go back to getting ratioed on Twitter. Go back to Davos with the other billionaire elite who think they know how to run the world. After her campaign kickoff in Oakland, California over the weekend, Senator Kamala Harris was given the preferred candidate treatment by CNN with a televised town hall Monday night. She defended her prosecutorial background, said she won't vote for a wall under any circumstances, and took a question about the chances of a woman beating Trump in 2020.
Senator, many Democrats that I've spoken with agree that the primary objective for 2020 is to nominate the candidate that has the best shot of defeating Donald Trump. Some have also said that, given what occurred in 2016 and the current political climate, that a male nominee will have a better chance this time around than a female nominee. Would you please respond to this so that this man has a response ready the next time a man tries to mansplain why a man would make a better nominee?
And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I really can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 Minutes. Researchers from around the world announced this week that the challenges of obesity, malnutrition, and climate change can only be addressed if they're thought of together as part of a single global syndemic. Shariki Kumanyika is a research professor of community health and prevention at Drexel University's School of Public Health.
A syndemic is a term that we have taken over from the world of diseases.
Consider contracting two separate diseases, with each magnifying the other and making you more than doubly sick. Over several decades studying obesity in the U.S., Kumanyika has seen those synergies firsthand.
A lot of the foods that are the most affordable are also high in calories and poor in nutrients.
Things aren't going well in tackling those individual problems. Kumanyika and more than 40 colleagues write in the medical journal The Lancet that no country has succeeded in reversing rising obesity, while malnutrition remains the leading cause of poor health globally. Climate change, meanwhile, is making everything worse, fueling crop failures, extreme weather, civil unrest, and the spread of disease. Kumanyika says seeing how those three pandemics fit together is the best way to figure out how to intervene.
We use the term triple duty actions or triple wins to say, if everybody's separately working on these things, it's not as efficient or effective as realizing that when you work on one, you're actually helping out with the other two.
One triple duty action would be reducing subsidies to oil companies and big agricultural firms, thereby helping make healthier local food economies more competitive. Another possible fix is cutting back on red meat, which would help lower the incidence of heart disease and obesity while freeing up agricultural land. No small issue when livestock production generates a fifth of the world's greenhouse gases. For a problem as large as the global syndemic, supersized solutions might be the only remedy. Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. And we always begin weather from around the world along the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're going to be a tad warmer today at, they're saying 63 degrees. We'll see if we top out of that. But it could happen. And this is one of the reasons why we are in an active fog advisory right now, as well as stagnated air. Stagnated air advisory will be lifting later tonight. And the fog advisory will be lifted as well, but this time more around noonish here, maybe later. It was pretty foggy yesterday. All right, so winds are light and variable out of the east and have been that way since we've been in this air stagnation and dense fog advisories. And it looks like they're going to stay that way until it looks like Friday. Then it will be shifting, but they don't say where. And winds should be picking up then. And we should be having rain this weekend with rain and snow flurries on Monday. Oops. All right. Well, that's always nice to consider. Looks like highs will be in the low 60s, lows at night in the low 40s. Pollen is rated at none. The air quality index is in the orange warning moderate level at 52 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is in the green low level at 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.84 inches. Visibility is down to 3 miles. And relative humidity is at 87%. It's going to get 63. It might be a little humid. We'll see. I think it's still sweater weather. That's what I think. Oh, and I'm sorry for those people that are at 55 below. I got to tell you, I've been in the Dakotas in the wintertime. I cannot tell the difference between 30 below and 50 below. Can anyone? Maybe some. All right, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Yeah, I know if they're renting, it's not really their property, but they do have essentially a life estate. Okay, so it is an extension of their property, if you want to get technical. Alrighty, London is 42 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 39 degrees with rain with a snow advisory, freezing advisory. So take care in Paris. Rome, though, is 50 degrees and sunny. Kiev is 35 degrees with a light drizzle. Kabul is 30 degrees Fahrenheit with a snow shower, which is now probably a good time to have a wedding party parading through the streets of Kabul, because I know for a fact the drones don't really like to fly in the snow. Really. Let's see. Hong Kong is 61 and clear. Tokyo is 39 and clear, and they have lifted their dry air warning, so that's good. Sydney, Australia is 74 and fair. San Francisco, California is 54 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And New York is 33 degrees Fahrenheit with snow showers, and guess what else? A gale warning. Oh man, talk about polar vortex. That is weather from around the world. Brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. I wanted to mention here before we really get started at the chef's table, my son also has provided quite a bit of music, beats and melodies for the interstitials and other aspects of not only West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, but Netroots Radio as a whole, and it's been fun putting that together. So I just wanted to mention that. And also do go to the links at my show notes diary on Daily Co's for Frances Living's work, and go to her shows and buy her music. All right. Phil Stewart and Idris Ali of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table, not counting the weather, of course. Now, as the Pentagon weighs new troop deployments to the U.S.-Mexico border, Democrats in Congress are poised to usher in unprecedented scrutiny of a politically charged mission championed by Donald J. Trump. Democratic Representative Adam Smith, the new chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, not the composer Adam Smith, I hope. Well, that would be fun, wouldn't it? Will hold a hearing on Tuesday with Pentagon officials he hopes will shed light on costs, scope, and goals of a deployment that critics have derided as a political stunt. U.S. officials told Reuters the border deployment, which has fluctuated in size over the past 3 months, could grow again by as many as 2,000 or more troops. And what are they keeping back? The images from the trailer to Sicario with the gagged women, the prayer mats and rugs in the middle of the desert, and cars that are faster and better than anything the U.S. has produced, and the Border Patrol and ICE and all of their advanced technology have at the moment. Now, you would think that they would, take the cars, these really souped-up cars, when they arrest these people and use them for ICE's and the Border Patrol's own devilish means, you would think. Now, of course, the Border Patrol did do a survey to find out if any border agent has come across any woman who's been bound and gagged as described by Donald Trump, and they couldn't find any. What they didn't mention is that what they did find, and they actually did find evidence of women bound, gagged, raped, and killed by their own Border Patrol agents who have been convicted as serial killers. I'm not kidding, serial killers with a plural S. Well, Adam Smith is skeptical about sending U.S. troops. Could it be the economists come back to life? No. To deal with a crisis he believes would be better handled by judges, as it always was. It's undeniable that we have significant increase in asylum seekers, Smith said. But that's not so much a job for the military as it is, well, we need more judges. How about we need more empathy and a few non-governmental organizations helping out so that we can process these people, house them properly, because they are refugees for a reason. Refugees aren't an invading army. They are escaping disaster-killing rapes, being tied up and gagged. The Pentagon first approved the high-profile deployment of active-duty U.S. troops to the Mexico border in October, in violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, I might say. However, critics assail the deployment as a political stunt to drive Republican voters to the polls because, I got to tell you, these people have a lizard brain tickle, and if you tickle it with racism, oh man, do they love to scratch it.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Luke Barnes of Think Progress brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. When former Trump campaign advisor and self-described dirty trickster, he calls himself a rat fucker. Let's be clear about that. Dirty trickster is for family consumption. All right? The reality is that he calls himself and his group rat fuckers. Sorry for being so angry. Roger Stone was indicted on Friday. He was mostly met with a chorus of boos and expletives when he attempted to explain himself on the steps of a Florida federal courthouse while giving the Nixon victory salute. What a weirdo. One individual who was there to support Stone, however, was Enrique Tarrio, chairman of the Proud Boys and former leader of its Miami chapter. Wearing a Roger Stone Did Nothing Wrong t-shirt. Was that in Cyrillic? Tarrio told Local 10 News, WPLG, that the indictment against Stone was nothing more than trumped-up charges, no pun intended. On Sunday, the Daily Mail also reported that Tarrio was seen visiting Stone at his Fort Lauderdale home. Stone also recorded a message with Tarrio on Friday for the Proud Boys website. Do you think that they're trying to rile up the brown shirts? Now, I read a study or some sort of report in which they quantified the possibility that the most virulent sycophants of Trump's Colt 45 would resort to violence if told to do so and would go and kill, this is not my words, go and kill targeted individuals if they were so named. The Proud Boys' national clout has receded significantly since last October when a group of its members was filmed brutally beating counter-protesters near the Metropolitan Republican Club in New York City. Except for one thing, it took them forever to admit it, that that's what happened. And Stone has repeatedly said, I love the Proud Boys. I'm so proud of them. They're like my boys. And they are. All right. Let's get out of here because we're at the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. We'll meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, so stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks And we'll meet up here tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.